the Art and Science of Wealth podcast, having an impact, leaving a legacy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Art and Science of Wealth with myself, Steffi Baker, and my co-host, Joe Milam.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. So today, it's just me and Joe riding solo, and we're going to talk about an article that I read last week in Forbes that I shared with Joe by a writer named John Hyatt, who writes about wealth billionaires and their companies. And it's called New Study Finds Rich Boomers Are Stressed About Handing Down Fortunes to Their Kids. I know, everyone, first world problems, right? But first world problems are still problems. And in this world, this is a big deal. So the issue seems to be that they are not confident that passing this money down to their heirs, it will be used wisely. Joe, what do you think?
Well, I hope if we have some time to also spend a little time debriefing on our prior 3 guests, because if for any new listeners that haven't listened to the prior podcasts, at least from the listening audience response, Seth Morton is a must listen. Steve Thayer would probably come in second. Wonderful, interesting guy, gets real technical on family foundations and working with families. And Professor Dave, very thoughtful man, is also very interesting and gets really in the weeds about what he's teaching at Claremont. So great guests, and we will want to talk, and we'll spend some time extracting a little bit of some of the fun stuff they cover as well. But well, as it relates to this transfer, there's an element of, there's absolute truth in it. That's a universal truth. There are very few families throughout time, much less baby boomers, that had wealth that were elegant in that transfer process. It is one where, to do it well, the controllers of the wealth, maybe the creators of the wealth, maybe a second or third generation still controlling family trusts, to plan effectively, they also have to plan for their demise. And that's an uncomfortable conversation to begin with for a lot of people. And it's something actually my family's experiencing. My mother and stepfather did very well in life after they got married. It's a wonderful story. And he's also old world in many ways. He's first generation American. He's Portuguese by background and very Catholic. And they don't like to talk about death. Getting them years ago, 20 years ago, I went to my stepfather in a very delicate state when they were really making serious money, and he was doing it largely in private companies, his own companies, things that would have been inelegant to distribute. And I took him to lunch and I said, Dick, I'm going to touch on a very delicate subject, but it's to make a point that I do this for a living, help families with substantial wealth, make sure that it's not pissed away when somebody dies tragically or unexpectedly. And I do know your affairs because you've shared them with me, yours and Mom's. And I will pay for, out of my pocket, your estate plan, because I know that if something happens to the two of you, it's all going to rest on me, because I was the one that's in the industry and amongst my siblings, and I have a stepbrother. And I said, I know it's going to fall in my lap, and it's going to be a mess. So I'll pay for it myself just to save my own brain damage. All 4 siblings will benefit, but I'll pay for it myself. And that was a very delicate conversation to have.
Ooh, what did he say? Did he take you up on it?
Well, he got his feathers ruffled.
Ooh.
Because of a whole number of dynamics. I don't want to, I'm getting obviously personal right away, and I don't want to throw him under the bus, but his I only offer because I've lived it firsthand, but I've seen the same reaction he had from lots of other clients. I do find there oftentimes is an ethnic bias to that. And also the generation of the wealth, right? If they're the wealth creators, they don't like to think about their demise. They're too busy making the money. I don't want to worry about that stuff, right? We've heard all these things. We heard it from Dave. We've heard it from Steve, right? These are common threads, and I experienced it firsthand. Yes, he eventually got an estate done. It was very pedestrian, and by his local lawyer he knew from the Elks Lodge or something. And then I let him sit on that. I was just glad to see something in place. And then thankfully he realized that guy didn't know what the hell he was doing. And he came to me because one of my clients, I managed their money. He was the top estate planning attorney in Sacramento.
Oh.
And he actually married into money. So I managed his wife's family money, but he was one of the top, known as the top estate planning attorney. So I brought them in and we had a proper meeting and we built a proper estate. And yes, it's in place. But it took multiple bites at the apple, which is something I learned that lesson. I learned that lesson even prior to that even though somebody's here and you want to get them to there, you don't try and do it all in one leap. You got to get them moving in that direction and then slowly get them to where you want them to eventually be. Because change is hard, but if you can get them to start the change, then implementing incremental steps is a lot easier as long as it's directionally part of a larger strategy. And
That's a great point, Joe. I'm not going to get someone to come in and say, yep, I know I'm going to die. Let's figure it out today.
Yeah.
Highly unlikely. I also want to point out the word that you used, elegant.
Yeah.
Elegant transfer.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
Well, and actually the best work I ever did in my career, and I knew when it happened, it would probably be the best work I ever did in my career running the multifamily office. And it happened right after I took over the company. I was 31. But our anchor tenant family was 3 generations of DuPonts. And their accountant died, their original financial advisor, my boss, died. Their vineyard died in the Napa Valley that they owned, a very famous vineyard.
Ooh.
All within 6 months. And I'm left with their affairs. I'm left with figuring out how to replant the vineyard. I'm left with a whole bunch of stuff. And that family allowed me, because they didn't have any choice, to follow my advice. And God bless them for doing it, because it was really, we established a family partnership. We gave away a bunch of the vineyard while it was unplanted to the kids to get that really highly appreciated asset at its lowest price in 30 years into the kids' hands through a family partnership structure. Got the thing replanted. The revenues went through the roof. They continued to implement an estate plan over, and both spouses have something. The last of the 2 surviving spouse died earlier this year. I probably saved that family $50-60 million in estate taxes. And it was something we implemented over time, but we got the first bones in place first. At the right, but to their credit, they did what they were told. And Steve, one of the things earlier, and I may be just interlacing some of our guests in some of our conversation, but one thing Steve said was really important, and I think it's a real testament to their practice is, and I found this with this client situation. I'm the young kid on the block. I'm 31 years of age, and they've got these big fancy attorneys in the San Francisco office that the big expensive attorneys. My boss is gone, so they're sort of trying to be the counselors for the clients on this potential for a family partnership strategy as part of establishing an estate plan. And long story short, after multiple meetings that we ran, I can't imagine what the legal bills were. The clients leave Napa, drive down to San Francisco. I show up from Menlo Park, show up to San Francisco, in their office, all the brain damage of getting to a big high rise in downtown San Francisco to talk to attorneys. And after multiple meetings like that, it got so to the point, Martha asked them, well, should we do this? Well, you could do this or you could do that. But if you do it, then they never would say yes or no. And finally, she turned around and looked at me and said, Joe, should we do it or not? I said, yes. She says, give me the pen. She signed it. And that leadership is oftentimes what's lacking, but I really got that sense from Steve and his firm that they not only know how to elegantly design a strategy, but also have the leadership say, yes, you should do this. They're not afraid of providing leadership as opposed to just counsel. It's a really important point for affluent folks. They want somebody they can trust. Also, and back to the article, I think it's an important topic that the families, well, we're both baby boomers, right? So I can throw mud at the baby boomers.
I'm an Xer, sorry.
Oh, you're an Xer. Okay, well, I'll throw mud at myself. I talk about the male ego all the time, quite confidently. So I could do the same thing with baby boomers. It is recognized as the most narcissistic generation ever. You have to start from that recognition. And so this insecurity is part because they don't want to let go because their personal identity is associated with it. And they're the most narcissistic generation in history. So that's a structural issue that's a problem. that's probably compounding what this article is speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
And they may be saying, well, I don't think my kids are prepared, or I don't think. Yeah, you don't want to let go. You don't want to let go, you narcissist. That's part of the problem.
Oh dear.
I saw these other earlier generation clients where that was more cultural. It wasn't generational. It was cultural, ethnic in particular. And again, I found Catholic in particular because the notion of death is scary. That's not, the fear of hell, that fiery thing that they've been taught for so long is really is. And again, Italians, Portuguese, these real European ethnic Catholics I have found were difficult to talk about estate planning because you had to talk about death, which they didn't want to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Yeah. So these are the influences, and to me, it always does come back to sort of the psychology of the individual. You have to read them and read what is it that's keeping them from doing the obvious, which is plan elegantly to keep the money out of the government's hands, ultimately, that they don't need to have if you just do a little planning ahead of time. Why are you avoiding the planning? That is really what you have to get to the heart of. And so a lot of these fears that when I read that article was, I was thinking about, yeah, you're a narcissist. You don't want to let go.
Or a control freak.
Yes. Yeah.
Not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, look at the number of baby boomers that won't let go and let the next generation of political leaders step into the breach. It's the same thing. We have the oldest average age of our political leaders, and it's largely baby boomers that don't want to let go. They got a great gig, and their identity and all their narcissistic tendencies are influencing that, in my opinion. So again, I think these are a foundational issue. That article, I don't recall. I remember reading it when you first sent it over to me. I didn't sadly freshen up on it this morning. But that was I remember reading it. My first reaction was, I know why.
Well, I agree with you. There is certainly a trend that generationally, and also I think you're right about the ethnicity. What strikes me that I read a lot of is the celebrities that pass without even a will sometimes. I'm thinking of most recently Anne H. And she's not worth that much. And it looks to me like her oldest son from her first marriage and her ex, most recent ex, who she had younger children with, are squaring off to control this. And it's not that much money. And my immediate thought was, and by the time they're done, there isn't going to be anything left for these children because you two are fighting over. And the older son, I think, is his early 20s.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not enough money to be that life-changing, especially if you live in LA.
Years ago, I went to some educational seminar put on by estate planning folks. And for whatever reason, either because it became a court case, which made it public documents, they were involved in settling Jerry Garcia's estate.
Ooh.
So celebrity. With similar dynamics as Anne Heche. And this presentation was whenever it was, maybe 5 years after Jerry Garcia died, but it had a lot of value. And same thing.
Yeah. And I think of, it blows me away. Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
Prince. Chadwick Boseman, who starred in Black Panther. He knew he was sick.
Right.
He had colon cancer. He had time. He didn't die, unfortunately. Like Prince was young, didn't expect to die. But I just want to say, where were their advisors? Although what we're talking about, they are probably, to some extent, they're turning a deaf ear. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to deal with it.
Let me give you another personal story, because this was really close to me, emotionally and personally. But my father was the oldest of 6 kids, and there were 4 boys and then 2 girls in order. And the youngest of the 4 boys, my Uncle John, I was very personally close to, much closer to him than my father. for a reason I won't bore our listeners for. And when my uncle, sadly, he after a career in teaching, he retired in July, and then became a principal, of course, after so many years. And then he was diagnosed with cancer, and that was terminal 4 months after retiring. It's tragic. And I couldn't wait to go fishing with him and play tennis with him like we used to, all these sorts of things, all these plans we had. And on his deathbed, in the hospital 2 days before he died, or maybe a week before he died, I said, Uncle John, do you have your affairs in order? With my two cousins. He divorced their mother and remarried. So we had messiness to that. Who's going to get what? And he had cherished things that he wanted his kids to have. He used to he had an old Model A he redid that was part of the family iconic sort of toy. He would parade it around at the high school, homecomings, where the peak gals were in the back, and he also was just finishing up a 57 Chevy Bel Air, and one car was going to the son and the Bel Air was going to the daughter. And his second wife, who also had a daughter from a previous marriage. And I said, Uncle John, do you have your affairs in order? I'm not going to tell you where things are going to go, but you got a potential for a mess here. And I went and got an attorney of mine, my attorney, and said, go draft these documents. And Uncle John never signed them.
Ooh.
And it caused a family rift like you wouldn't believe. It's still going on to this day, and it's tragic. So I saw it firsthand. And then the anger between my cousins and then their stepmom and all other stuff I won't bore with our listeners with over the settlement of things as minuscule as photographs, and the anger because they were looking at it, pointing fingers at each other when it was Uncle John's fault. I put everything teed up for him and he didn't sign it. And he was still of sound mind and body. I know. So that's that's a firsthand experience. And why don't people? What are the fears? What are the reasons? Even when they're on death's door, they don't do it right. I don't know the answer to that, by the way. I can reference my thoughts on that article as far as my uncle was part of the baby boom as well. So maybe it's still the same thing. I don't know that's what influenced him, but it is a really interesting challenge. Like I said, I have seen the ethnic influences. This goes back 30 years, where I deal with Italian Catholics in particular. I had a number of clients because of the region of the country I lived in, Sacramento or out Northern California, the wine country actually. That there was a lot of Italian Catholics that were landowners and farmers that all of a sudden people wanted to buy their land because they were going to plant grapes on it instead of whatever row crops. So the Italians were farming, and all of a sudden these were multi-millionaires but farmers. And I just found this consistent theme is they didn't like to talk about death, contemplation of death, and maybe that's where this whole thing needs to reside, to fix it for multiple mindsets. Whether you're a narcissistic baby boomer or whether you're an Italian Catholic, the issue needs to be the realities of death and why it's important to contemplate your own death and prepare accordingly.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's going to be a struggle to get people to do that.
Well, it's any service business. To get human beings to do what's in their own best interest is hard, and takes repetition and persistence, and whether it's eating well or just modest exercise, whatever, right? There's a lot of behaviors we know we should do and we don't. So including something as profound as this. But yeah, it's an interesting challenge. And again, I'm sure you've seen it. Any practitioner that's been around families and wealth and multiple generations, you've seen the horror stories, and it's more the norm than the exception.
Absolutely. And I think what it stems from, and it'll be interesting to see what goes on in my generation, Gen X, but they don't want to talk about money. Right. Death and money seem to be verboten. Yeah. And on the flip side of this, talking about money, so of course they're nervous about passing on the money because they know, I think in most cases, they really haven't prepared the kids.
I think, again, that article obviously is making generalizations, which is always dangerous. There's definitely baby boomers out there that aren't narcissistic, that have planned well, right? There was an elegant transfer already in place, right? Structure and strategy. So we are talking about whatever the percentage of the population of the baby boomers. I will stand by my generalization that it's a narcissistic generation because it wasn't my label. But yeah, it still is always a process, and oftentimes people get it. The light bulb goes off by some external catalyzing event. Their advisors they trust, they can tell them what to do, and they still won't listen until something else happens. And they go, okay, I'm ready now. And I think that's what happened with my stepfather. My mom coached me on how to approach it with him because she knew him better than I did, obviously, on how he made decisions. And she says, you got to just put it out there and let him mull it for a while. And let him live with it for a while and let him think about it for a while. And that's pretty consistent with how his decision making unfolded. And he didn't strive for an optimal, he just strived for the first step. The local attorney he knew, blah blah blah, small town, and he got something in place. But then he lived with that for a while and realized, nah, that's not good enough, right? But it was his idea. That's maybe ultimately that is the nature of human behavior, that oftentimes you get people to make difficult decisions. You got to help them as a service provider, professional advisor, what have you, to help them let it be their idea as opposed to your idea.
Right.
Figure out how to work with them and how to communicate with them and how to drop little notes or breadcrumbs, if you will, of information so it can become their idea.
Yeah.
As
Or
opposed
give
to
them the time to buy into it too.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Planting seeds and letting them grow and letting them tend the seeds, maybe.
Yeah.
So they see enough green shoot of, I want to see this continue to grow. So I mean, I've seen some things in my personal life. This hasn't happened so much in my family, but other than when my father passed, and this is more an issue of people at the affluent level. If you don't plan properly, if you wind up in some kind of assisted living or nursing home, that can eat up all of the wealth that you have amassed. In my case, my father was not wealthy by any stretch. He was a public health administrator for the state of Wisconsin.
Okay.
And his life serving the people of Wisconsin. He administered specifically, at least from what I remember, I'm sure he had more than one job, but it was AFDC, which is aid to families with dependent children. So he helped people in Milwaukee get welfare. Yeah. Anyway, so he got Parkinson's disease when I was in high school, and he wound up in a nursing home with dementia. And I was in England. My first stint living in London, I'd gone over on a student work permit, and I came home from the office one day. I was working for a director of the Channel Tunnel project, which was being built at the time. I sat in basement of Waterloo Station in an office trying to decipher this guy's handwriting. Oh my God, it was so frustrating. So I went home, I'm like, phone rings, I pick it up, and I hear the operator call from the United States for, oh boy, and it's my mom. I immediately knew as soon as he was gone. And what happened was, I wasn't there. My sisters had to deal with most of it, but the nursing home he was in seized just about everything. Well, they seized everything he had.
Right.
The only thing left was a life insurance policy through the state that was one of his benefits that had our names on it that they couldn't touch. Everything else they took. Sure. So again, but this can hit, if people don't plan properly, this can hit affluent to high net worth people very easily. Or if they have to go and do something, the spend down to get Medicare to kick in these are issues that Xers are dealing with. Xers are still, between 42 and 57 right now, and dealing with.
You just gave us your age.
Well, range. I don't know. I look marvelous.
Yes, you do at any age.
I am not a candidate for plastic surgery, so this is what it's going to be. I'm loving it as it is. I didn't need glasses till last year.
Nice.
A long time. Nice. Anyway, so this is what I'm seeing with some of my friends is they've got children And then they've got parents that they're dealing with, and trying to figure all this out is challenging. And if you are a person of any kind of means, it can really put you in difficult straits. And another thing that comes up for people my age is with their parents, if they are well-to-do, they may not be spending the money in the wisest ways. And that puts people in my age bracket having to figure out, how are we going to stop them from giving it away? My husband's, I think it was his grandmother. Who was it? Mother? I can't remember, but one of his family members started watching Jim and Tammy Faye Baker.
I lived through that with a family member myself.
And had a nest egg, and it all went to those two. They were appalled when they found out what was going on.
Oh yeah.
Didn't know.
Yeah.
Just in front of the television. Oh, no, send money. Oh, and she did. And
Tammy's crying. Yeah.
Tammy's crying. Oh, yeah. Tammy's the fake mascara. Jan Hooks played her very well on Saturday Night Live back in the day.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, so these are all, it's complicated.
Yeah, it really, like I said, the from my own experience, Seth, because again, every situation is different, but the human being is the human being, and that's to me why you dial into the human themselves and what are the typical fears, aspirations, motivations, what have you, at the human level, irrespective of generation, irrespective of ethnicity, irrespective of wealth, dollar amounts.
Oh yeah.
And to get to the core is to find their motivation that's most important to them, and then find your breadcrumb or seeds you want to plant, or breadcrumbs of information you want to lead them, or to be their idea to actually have the outcome their emotional attachment is going to be maximized to. Right?
Yes. Yes.
My stepfather, I'm too going through this right now, or not going through it as much as just because of the calendar, my beloved stepfather, I'm not stepfather, I'm sorry, my ex-father-in-law, excuse me, the father that was the mother of my children. We stayed friends. I've stayed friends with my ex-wife, and that her whole family. And he passed recently. In fact, this week I went to his internment into Fort Sam Houston military. It was like the Texas version of Arlington. It was unbelievable. Acre upon acre upon acre upon acre of headstones of veterans. And my stepfather was, or father-in-law was,
served in the Navy in World War II. He's buried in a military cemetery in Milwaukee.
Yeah. And so that his internment this week, and I went and saw the family, and he was so meticulous in how he handled his affairs, because he was dying of cancer. So this wasn't a surprise, and it was merciful. He was more than ready to go, and glad he went. We all know that. But he had every password written down, every account, every bank account, every detail, the trust documents in all the kids' hands, what they're to expect. The long-term care insurance policy was in their hands that they had started executing. It was the most thorough plan I've ever seen. And when we would visit, he would bounce things off of me and show me the plan. I mean, it was literally, he had it all on I think a PC Junior back 30 years ago, before he even put it on and he kept the original PC and floppy disks because he didn't need a faster computer. But he kept everything on the computer. He kept all the accounts. He tracked his brokerage accounts every day. I mean, he was a planner, and it was the most thorough. He made me look bad with my own affairs because he was so meticulous. And my ex-wife, she's the middle child of 5. She was sort of tasked with sort of sorting everything out as they were put into the long-term care facility, and then was his doctor's appointments for the cancer that was spreading and all. She's been the principal caregiver. She's got a brother in town, but her other siblings are not in this case, San Antonio, Texas. And without all that financial planning and all the details and all the accounts and all the putting her on this as a co-signer to make the elegant. I mean, this guy did it right at the most detailed level. And it was still difficult for my ex-wife to navigate all that because of her own emotional journey. And that's largely what I wanted to get to, is that, it really is an act of disrespect to your loved ones that are left if you don't do the planning. It is an ultimate act of disrespect, in my opinion, because they're going to be in an emotional state. just because of your loss, even if it's merciful and expected, like my ex-father-in-law. It's still difficult just because of the absoluteness of the loss. And
Mhm.
then for your affairs to be a mess as well, as I saw with my uncle, it compounds that emotional journey your loved ones, the ones that are still alive, experience, because the disappointment and the mess and the brain damage then gets also just elongated if it becomes a court case and suing your stepmother, the evil stepmom, blah, 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 right? And when my cousins, they still rail against her. And I said, I always go back and say, it's your dad's fault. He didn't sign the documents that were in place. It's your dad's fault. Don't point the finger at her. She's also gone through an emotional journey.
Yeah.
They were married a fair period of time. It wasn't a recent marriage. They were married 20 years or something. So it really is an act of disrespect to the ones you love. And you can't tell somebody, hey, plan or else you're disrespecting your loved ones. Well, I made them all this money. Yeah, but you have no idea what they're going to go through if something happens to you. You have no idea. And you clearly don't care. And that is the act of disrespect.
It's almost like they need to take Scrooge's journey.
Yes.
Who
Oh,
needs
that's
to
lovely.
take
Perfect.
That just popped in my, and I love the Christmas.
Perfect. Oh, yeah.
Love it. When we were living in Baltimore a few years ago, right before the pandemic, we went to the Shakespeare Company in Baltimore, and that man was the best Scrooge I've ever seen.
Albert Finney is the best Scrooge ever in a film.
I've seen years of Scrooges, but this is what just hit me hard in the gut when they need to take
They
Scrooge.
need to see exactly. Oh, that's brilliant.
Maybe we're on to something. I was hoping we could get to some solutions. I'm like, maybe that's a thing.
Oh,
we need to work with this and help, because they can't see and they're not going to listen. And I watched one woman who was a lawyer in a group I was in, trying to sell legal insurance. And she did the usual, beating people over the head. You can lose this, and the fear-based stuff. And I private messaged her. I'm like, you're not getting this.
Yeah.
Can we talk? Can I tell you? And you're right. You're right. This isn't working. And what did she do? A week later, she started back in the group with the same campaign. I'm like, fear isn't, if it were going to motivate them, they would have done something by now.
Right, exactly.
Look at this could happen, blah, blah, blah. No. Maybe what they need to see is a glimpse into, and this is what your son or daughter's life is going to look like.
Yes.
Because this wasn't done. This didn't happen, or It's a Wonderful Life. I wish I'd never been born. Okay.
Yeah,
great.
here's what it looks like.
Look what happened because you weren't there. So maybe this is and this is really appealing to me because this is story-based.
Yeah.
People respond to a lot better than you're going to make them suffer. You're going to this, la, 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 la. And it's like putting down a pet. And I've talked with vets about this, and so many, the owners are so upset and they think they can't handle it, but they know that when the owner can't handle it, and I have been that person many years ago, I would not be now, but they've given you a lifetime of love. The least you can do is be there, and be there when they're looking in your eyes. And the vets say they're looking for your eyes. They want to know it's okay. And you've got to be there. Mom, we have rescue kitties, and I promised all of them I'll be there. And I may go cry a flood later, but I will be there for you. I will not sit and cry while this is going on. It's you've got to do this. It's the right thing to do. Oh, wow. I was hoping we'd come up with some solutions. I didn't expect this.
Actually, that's a really interesting one. The tone is exactly the combination of the Scrooge arc and with a little bit of Jimmy Stewart influence, because it's I think that's a brilliant idea. I really do. I think that I don't know, I'm thinking who would do it, or why would they even want to bother, because it would feel like but it would be there's been lots of remakes of A Christmas Carol, with different thesis. Henry Winkler did a good one. He was a furniture maker. I don't know if you saw that. It was a great story.
Yeah.
It was still the same thing, right?
Yeah. Vanessa Williams starred in a version of it that was very good. She played a very self-absorbed diva, and I liked it because John Taylor from Duran Duran played one of the ghosts. I think it's on YouTube. You got to see it. But there are so many iterations of this, and it's a story.
That's a great story.
We all relate to that. Who doesn't know the Christmas Carol, and It's a Wonderful Life, and particularly in American culture. Then I guess if you're dealing with people in other cultures and other countries, you'll have to find something meaningful there. But wow,
that's a great idea. Actually, that would be because that is a message.
Change. I feel so sad when I read these stories about celebrities, and I hear from some of my friends, and my family won't talk about the money. I don't know what I'm going to do, and how can we affect some change? So I'll have to figure out what I will run with this. You'll have to run with it. We got to figure something to do.
They're always looking for different themes of a new spin on the Christmas Carol story arc, right? It is a universal story arc, but same, period piece, Dickensian period piece gets a bit tired. It's been done so many times. So yeah, they're branching off into different storylines, different eras, but still it's the same experience set. Three, right? I think that's a brilliant idea, but it's centered around a wealthy person that didn't get their estate done right. That is the story.
You left chaos.
They were a miser, and I think that miserly sort of curmudgeon sort of thing is consistent. I love that idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, it's to combine the two ideas of what if you hadn't been here? This is what it would if all of this that you worked to build didn't exist. This is what your family, your children, your grandchildren, this is what would be happening.
Well, the story arc would also, like I said, that the Christmas future is you could see Christmases were ruined because the families were fighting over money. You could have eliminated the fight so they didn't get to have a Christmas, because that would really work. They're busy fighting amongst themselves and the siblings and all that stuff. We've all seen real world stories that happen almost every time, when it's not been the plan been put in place and communicated properly. That's a key part of this whole thing as well.
Joe, you just hit on the other half of it. Communicated properly, because the other problem that we can now touch on is if there was a plan and people did know about it, well, the other part of this is then someone doesn't like it, so they wait till that person passes and then they sue.
Yep.
Because
siblings
they can.
Yes. And old scars from when they were 10 years of age surface, and all this sort of angst, and absolutely. That's real world examples. It happens so often, and I'm seeing it with a friend's family circumstances right now. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And this is all so bloody avoidable.
That's the kicker. That
pain is avoidable. If it's built and designed properly. And again, proper design is very situational. And we sort of opened up with, it doesn't have to all be put in place at once. It can be implemented over time, as it probably should be, because circumstances change even. But absolutely, it needs to be communicated.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. What's going on? Who might be? Which sibling is going to be the trustee if they're going to take a in-family trustee? Why they were chosen, right? Yeah. The whole thing articulated, so you're minimizing the risk of the emotional turmoil, the legal costs, the legal. Oh my God.
The blowing up. So just to put this in perspective, I have this article up in front of me, and it says here, nearly 73 trillion is expected to pass to younger generations in the US over the next 20 years. Well, another 11.9 trillion will be given to charities, according to estimates from Cerulli Associates. I believe they're out of Boston. $73 trillion. This goes to what I say is there is more than enough money in the world to solve problems. More than enough. We are not lacking. This planet does not lack anything except for a lot of common sense. But that's
and
another
ability.
story. But yeah, I mean, this is so much money that can, and people are being so generous these days with supporting causes that they care for. The younger generations really care, behind me, the millennials, and I would. Hey Nick, what are we up to now? Is it after millennial? Is it Y and
What are you, Nick?
yeah? Jump in, represent.
I have no idea what I am. Gen Z?
What are you? Are you Y? Are
I
you Y?
think Gen Z, maybe? I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I'm very encouraged by meeting people your age and other of their vision for the future and what they care about and what they want to support. Awesome. Good. This is huge money. The planet doesn't have to go to hell in a handbasket with that kind of money being transferred 20 years.
It's never been
Here
about
in
money.
20 years. Yeah, you're probably going to still be here in 20 years.
It's been about the will
Yeah.
and the courage to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that applies to a lot of situations.
Totally. And then people don't also, what I find frustrating is people don't understand the difference between a will and a trust and the nuances of, yeah, everyone get a will to start, get a will.
Yeah. You get a pour over will and the trust will get formed. So it's easy.
Right. Yeah. And trusts are easier, for the affluent people who think that trusts are only for the super wealthy. It is not, does not have to be that expensive to set up.
Yeah.
And you can do this. And just briefly, the beauty of a trust is it transfers immediately, whereas a will can take probate up to a year. It's not public, it's private. So when you have cases like Paulina Porizkova and Rick Ocasek, when he passed away, and I'm like, he left a will? At that level, he didn't have trusts. I don't know if I entirely believe that, but he changed the will to specifically cutting her out a month before he died.
Right.
And she struggled and suffered for a year while she had to contest things. And my hat is off to her. She's spoken about it publicly, and that was brave. Very brave. She admitted that she had to ask friends for grocery money during that year. She did not know what was going on. There, huge age difference between the two of them. When he was in his 40s and she was in her early 20s when they got married. And he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it all." Okay.
Sure.
And she was a top earning supermodel at the time. She earned her own money. She doesn't know where it went.
Yeah.
And
well, that's a whole other topic.
That's a whole other thing. We could do a whole one just breaking down their situation because again, the cars were also very successful and supposedly it didn't look like there was that much money.
Wait, baby boomer, rock star. That's doubling down on narcissism right there. Sorry.
It's okay.
That's doubling down on narcissism. That's narcissism cubed, probably.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, that situation was insane, and I'm sure that goes on all the time. And she did a great public service to women and to everyone to speak up and let them know what happened behind the scenes, or at least some of what happened behind the scenes.
Yeah.
What do we do? There has to be a better way, and all this money set to go. Oh gosh, everyone, Scrooge. Get your family Scrooge story together.
I think you've got it.
I dig.
I'm not to be a estate planning Scrooge. I think I'm serious. I think that's a brilliant
too.
medium to
people won't listen otherwise. We see it every day. They are not listening. Fear isn't working. Positive trying to motivate them it works in limited situations.
Or greed. Keep it out of the government's hands. No, that's not the reason, but that's one of the tools to sell it.
That point and this is what's sad. Like so much of Prince's money went to the government.
Right.
He had cares or causes he cared deeply about that it could have gone to. I think his family members did get some, but
right.
It's, maybe you break it down for this is okay. So if you're worth 100 million, using a round number, if you do nothing, this is what the government's going to take away.
Right.
That could be part of the Scrooge story.
I think that script would write itself.
We could add a ghost.
Oh, Yeah, the
Yeah,
IRS
gotta
goes
go
floating
to
around.
the
Yeah, yeah.
IRS. This is the IRS, the future ghost from the IRS.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That the IRS agent's the ghost of future Christmases or Christmas future. Oh, I love that idea. I love that. You're right. The IRS agent is that ghost. I love that.
Oh, that's perfect. The future ghost is the IRS. I gotta
As the
write.
IRS agent. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Okay, good.
I love that. And somebody from charity would be the ghost of Christmas present and ghost of Christmas past, one of their business partners, like the original script, right?
Yeah. Or their parents saying, "We want you to go out and do well, and your little so and so, you're gonna go light the world on fire," and
Right.
whatever. Or they scrimped and saved to send their little son or daughter to college,
Yeah.
and they didn't live to see it.
They sacrificed. Exactly. They sacrificed for the next generation. Do a little sacrifice for your next generation. Don't be such a damn narcissist. Yeah, I like that. Like we could. How much time we got? We could write that script.
We're on it. I'm writing.
We're on it. So
I'm the writer, so write it all down, and then we can go and we can get a production. Nick.
Nick. Yeah, Nick.
I can see it now. Nick going cut and
yeah.
cue the ghost. Clapboard.
And it could be like a celebrity, a professional athlete. The wealth creator can be somebody that a broad spectrum of folks, not just a business person, tech entrepreneur or some silly thing like that, but actually somebody that would even appeal to even a broader audience.
And
legacies matter. That's why we have this title, having an impact and leaving a legacy. That's our subtitle here. And I think of my uncle's legacy is tainted, and he was a lovely man, but it's tainted.
Yeah.
Because of what he didn't do. One simple thing.
Yeah, that's
and built a lifetime of a personal brand and relationships and love from his kids and admiration from those. And yet this simple task tainted a lifetime of good.
One little, he had the papers and he didn't sign, and I just remembered my point. What am I going to do in service? I could live another 40, 50 years. I've had fun knocking around and seeing what I wanted to see and doing what I wanted to do. Now, what matters that I can do?
Well, you're trying to figure out your legacy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
What's my legacy? And I don't have children. So I got cats, and they're going to be well taken care of. But what can I do? I've lived such a wonderful life of extraordinary experiences, and I have access to amazing people and amazing stories. What can I do? What is that worth? What if we're all each other's little miracle, and if we're all a little spark that here, go share your spark, so it'll ignite someone's flame.
Yeah.
Sometimes one sentence you can say. I said to my friend Lindsay, who teaches people how to make amazing money on employee jobs, and she said, "Well, money is freedom." And I said, "No, that's middle class thinking. Freedom is freedom. You're always free. Freedom is not outside yourself. It's not out there in anyone or anything. Freedom is freedom. Money buys you choices." And her jaw dropped. One sentence, and I can think of times when someone said one little sentence or a couple words to me, and like, that just completely turned the kaleidoscope. I see life entirely different. It'll never be different. And it was so funny because she said her initial reaction was, "Oh, screw you. Tell me more." What one thing can I say, or what one thing could I do? What value can I? Because for me, I don't know if I'll leave a ton of money or not, but there's a lot of people I could do something to. I love writing. I could write something. I could write how to stage Scrooge in your family.
I think as you're saying that, it is a profound question. Obviously, we're not going to answer it on this podcast. That's a personal choice and journey that you have to go through. But what did come to mind is that I really have loved movies for a long time. I mean, anyway, and the movie Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey and Morgan Freeman.
Yes.
The word that came out of my as you were saying that is, what can I do? And the phrase that he would say is, be the change. And it doesn't have to be grand gestures. is the only answer I would give you that I want to spend time on our podcast here is it doesn't have to be grand gestures and grand efforts because it is cumulative. You know, you don't know the impact you're going to have on with the simplest thing every day, people you bump into every day. Because oftentimes if you want to, I want to help a lot of people. Well, that's nice.
Noble.
It's noble, but it's also a little narcissistic because because the word is I.
Yeah.
Right. You lead with I. I hear this with startups, impact startups all the time. I'm really passionate about this. I tell them, I don't care. And nor do you investors care. Stop pitching it because you're passionate about it. They care about what they care about. Keep your passions to yourself. You need that passion to go down the entrepreneurial journey because it's going to be hard. That's your fuel. That's not your selling ticket.
No.
And it pisses everybody else off. You're just beating them over the head with your own passions because they care about what they're passionate about. How is what investing in you going to serve their legacy? That is the message you need to figure out.
Yeah, that's very
their
true.
legacy they care about, not yours.
Right.
Not yours.
Yeah. I shared a video of Chris Evert and from a recent interview with a journalist, and she's running her tennis camp for underprivileged kids down in Florida. She's been married and divorced 3 times, and she's lived a
She keeps turning down my proposals. I got to tell you that.
Oh, maybe she'll.
I know.
But I loved this moment, and I'm glad we're bringing this up because since we call this legacy, what she said is making me question everything I think about legacy. And the interviewer said something to the effect of, well, so is this your legacy? Or asked her about her legacy, and she looked visibly uncomfortable and said, I'm not thinking about legacy. That's selfish. That's about me. Exactly. So, and we should do another one about this on let's talk about legacy and how do you define it for you that isn't, I meet people who I know of someone who's running around going, oh, I'm going to give people a percentage of my company and I'm going to make all kinds of money for everybody. And
optics.
Ultimately, it's funny because it sounds good, but it's all about that person.
Yeah, it is.
What I just said is verging on all about there's a fine line between service and narcissism, right?
Oh, well, having studied philanthropy for a very long time, the answer is hell yes. The answer is
so how do you stay on the side of service? And here's another controversial bomb. I hate the term servant leader. Oh, shut up.
Well, yeah.
It's all about you. Servant leader. Everyone, almost without exception, anyone that I see with that on their LinkedIn profile, or that's what they stand up and say,
I don't trust them.
I don't trust them. That's bull. A leader's a leader. And if you have to say you're a servant leader, you've just told us that you're neither.
You're not one. Yeah, that's right. You're neither. neither service oriented or actually a leader. You're absolutely right.
Look at me. I'm so humble.
Yes.
No.
Yes. I'm just a servant leader. Anyway, we could stray. We got to be careful. I would like to spend the last few minutes, if we can,
let's
talk about just extracting. We don't need to belabor it, but I do like to go back and review and sort of digest and because there's so much comes at us from the brilliant guests we've had so far. Beth Morton was our last guest, and that was for me is what I love about just talking to Seth on the phone. He has such a breadth and depth of both knowledge, academic and educational rigor, and recall that there's almost too much to synthesize and take away from his stuff. But what did, in your mind, what stood out the most, I guess?
Just honestly, the simple concept of applying a system to a family office.
That's great.
Because we all hear, if you've seen one, which I don't entirely agree with either.
Right.
But deciding to overlay a system on what you're doing, you don't have to,
My goodness.
Yeah.
It's an economic engine in and of itself. A family office is an economic entity.
Exactly.
Be treated as such.
Yeah.
Right?
And if you just systemized it a little more, then also not only would it be good for your family, but then others could more
That's
easily
right.
learn from you. And there could be, I mean, it's never going to be an entire cookie cutter blueprint, but wow, we could get some efficiency in here.
Yeah, but
You be a little more methodical,
yeah,
and that again could feed into, and there is a system for passing this on. There is a system for it being okay to discuss what happens when you're not here.
right. Not unlike automobiles. They're
Yes.
all different, except they all have 4 tires. They have a frame. They have a propulsion system, engine or electric now, right? They have brakes. They have structural components that are standard, and families have the same, right? You can have different sort of design features, but the bones need to be in place.
Yeah, that was the other
Frame.
takeaway from, I'd never considered it. And as a person who I think I'm of myself as more creative, although I do have a fairly good left brain. I do like to be, all right, let's get some strategy and get some order here. But I thought about how this could benefit me and family offices and everyone to be a little bit more systematic in my thinking.
Yeah, it's great.
Because
Well,
then it's repeatable,
yep.
not just, oh, wow, cool, that worked. Why? I don't know.
I don't know.
Repeat
Right.
it. Yeah.
My takeaway, having talked so much with Seth before, and again, I was trying to be clear that we have both a personal and a professional relationship. It started personal and it's evolved, which is
Mm.
kind of ideal. Is his thoughtful definition of the difference between rich and wealth.
Another excellent moment. Mhm.
Yeah, it was for me, again, just really highlighting one is a state of mind and one is a balance sheet measure. And you want to be wealthy, and it isn't controllable. That's the thing that is also so important and valuable, is that being wealthy is completely within your control,
Yes.
because it doesn't have anything to do with the number zeros.
No, and it's many more things than money.
Far more things that are more
Many more
valuable.
things than money.
And also, those are the things that actually are the defining components of a legacy that will outlive you, regardless of your efforts of pursuit of a legacy. Those are the things that will stick around because they're cumulative,
Yeah.
right? It's the brand components
Mhm.
and the personal brand. So that was a highlight for me. How about Dave,
Yeah. Oh,
professor from
Dave,
Claremont?
Dave is been my friend for over a year and a half, probably. Yeah, I connected to him about the time he started his job about a year and a half ago. Dave is so experienced and thoughtful about working with family businesses.
Mm,
So, that's hard for me to say what was the moment, because I have experienced so much of Dave and his wisdom.
sure.
Just that his ability to give insights. And I always love his story about why he got into working with family businesses. If he saw one family that did it well and one family where the wheels fell off, and
Yeah.
he wanted to be the person that helped people do it well and avoid having the wheels fall off.
Yeah. And there's been folks like Dave throughout time, but the evidence of the mistakes continually being made is proof of the need for people like Dave and like you. I'm not in that business really anymore like I used to be, but it's important to have boots on the ground for the next era of people that are likely to repeat the same mistakes prior generations made and they didn't learn from.
No.
That's also the human condition.
Oh, yeah.
The what came across for me with Dave was I learned something, which I always compulsive about research, but I learned about Mr. Hughes, who he's working with, who came out of retirement sort of and worked with him.
Yeah.
What's that gentleman's name?
Jay
Mr.
Hughes. Yeah, James E. Hughes, but he's known as Jay Hughes. Yeah. Let's I will say again, Jay had retired and he was out of this. And for him to step up out of retirement and make a return, and also underwriting some of Dave's work
Yeah.
is a tremendous commentary on who Dave is. And
I didn't know who Jay Hughes was. Seth already knew about who Jay Hughes was. No, he's the, I thought he was dead. I said, no, he came out of retirement to work with our last speaker. So no, this guy's Mr. Hughes has been the longest running sort of real thoughtful thinker in the modern era. There might have been some 50 and 60 and 70 years ago, who knows, right? But even this family office phenomenon is a relatively modern in its proliferation in the numbers of them that are people self-labeling or real family offices. So there was a handful 50 years ago, but not that many.
Mhm.
So, okay, well, that's that for me. Those are great highlights.
Okay.
All three of our guests are profoundly accomplished professionals. Dave is a fairly young man, but he's got Mr. Hughes coming out of retirement. That speaks to his legitimacy and importance of the things that do come out of his mouth, which I just love that. Yeah, Steve is a seasoned practitioner with his colleague Tom Handler, and yeah, these guys are thoughtful folks.
Yeah.
Just thoughtful folks, and Steve covered a lot of territory.
He did.
I think he was awfully excited about a chance to share with maybe fellow travelers, to quote Seth, but like-minded folks on this subject, because I met him at a family office event in Chicago, and yet so many of the panelists that were spewing forth what their level of expertise or insights, most of it was pretty pedestrian content, kind of obvious, and they always felt like they were selling something. Steve just stood up and gave facts that I literally chased him down after he walked off the dais and to the back of the room. I chased him down and I said, Steve, I may be one of 2 or 3 people in this room that realized just how high a quality that information was. So thank you.
It was Steve, and I've known Steve and Tom for a long time, and they are such different personalities. And Steve is the quiet one. He knows so much, and he's quite content to be in the back of the room and not necessarily. So it was really good that we gave him a spotlight, because he deserves it. And there's so much he has to share.
Yeah.
The M&A experience he has with family office and at that level, I don't know a lot of people that can match it.
Yeah, I mean, they really understand the importance of not just being estate planning attorneys or foundation expert attorneys, but trusted advisors.
That
is
they will tell you what to your point about advice.
Yes.
Counsel, that they will tell you, and where Tom is certainly more outspoken, he will still quietly tell you exactly what he thinks and give the hope side.
And tell you what you should do
And what the ramifications are of not doing something.
Exactly. They are leaders. They're not just technicians. They're leaders.
And they're not just thought leaders, they're do leaders.
They're do leaders.
That's another. We keep going after the sacred.
Yeah, you're not a thought leader, you're a do leader. So what have you done?
Yeah, you're do leader. Oh, there's another great concept.
You gotta write that. You gotta write something on that. You're the writer.
I'm not a thought leader. I am a do leader. You do leader. Let's be do leaders.
Do leaders. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Not be servant leaders. Let's actually go.
No. Let's not. Yeah.
Let's not be servant leaders or thought leaders.
Yeah.
No. Let's be do leaders. Just doers.
Awesome.
Yeah. Let else follow if they choose.
That comes from being, to get a little existential. Comes from
anyway.
Worrying about it. All right.
Well, this is a fun one. I hope we keep this rhythm up of because we are just, our goal is to just capture a body of wisdom from our respective Rolodexes and anybody else that's going to start showing up that really finds that this is as good a signal on this topic as they can find in one source. And that's ultimately our goal. We're not, as people can see, we're not selling advertising. We're in the business of just really trying to synthesize through the noise.
Just to say, I would like to preview. We will be definitely tapping into both of our networks of women. We're looking for the rainbow universe of different experiences and thought, and we hit up some of our favorite people first that we know well and know have great messages and knowledge and thoughts to share. There's more to come, and just stay tuned for the rainbow. I guess that's what I'll say.
We're going to try and find the best people possible to offer up signal on the topic. And yes, we are blind to that. It has nothing to do with the optics. I just want people to share that have meaningful, authentic experiences to capture that and memorialize it through this medium.
I guess I will close it up. Everyone, thank you for joining us. I hope you've gotten something out of this. please hit us up with what you got out of it. And thank you for listening, and join us again for episode 6.
Thank you very much for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Art and Science of Wealth podcast, Having an Impact, Leaving a Legacy. Edited and produced by Nicholas Peck.